My goodness, there's so many Marvel movies out there, but could you believe that there could have been even more? Now, a running theme you may realise throughout this video is how we ended up with some of these movies in some form anyway. But here is a list of some Marvel movies that came close to happening but never came to be. And in some cases that's a really good thing. Alright, starting off we have Nicolas Cage in Ghost Rider 3. I'm not gonna lie, I've seen Ghost Rider 2 Flaming Ride of Vengeance or whatever the frick it was called, and I still completely forgot that a sequel to the original Ghost Rider movie existed. Back in 2007, Nicolas Cage was cast as Johnny Blaze for a Ghost Rider solo film. This movie is sort of the last of the bad superhero movies from the 2000s. If you forget Ghost Rider 2 Ride My Vengeance Tonight or whatever the frick. You see, around this time Marvel Studios were starting up their first MCU movie in Iron Man 1, and DC were getting ready to release the critically acclaimed The Dark Knight the following year in 2008. So the landscape for what superhero movies as a genre was certainly changing. The original Ghost Rider was a big budget movie and people liked Nicolas Cage and his terrible wig as Johnny Blaze. But the rubbish story and bad CGI caused people to react badly to this movie and say that it was... It was, however, a financial success in theatres, so a sequel, Ghost Rider 2 Spirit Don't Swallow or whatever the frick it was called, was given the green light. Surprisingly, this also sucked harder than a Dementor. Shortly after the film's release, the directors talked about making a third Ghost Rider movie because they hate us, I guess. It was said that Nicolas Cage was very pumped about making another one, even if nobody else was. As time went on though, Nick Cage started distancing himself from the franchise and said he hopes a third movie happens, but without his involvement, saying maybe we could have a lady Ghost Rider instead. 5 years after the last movie, the rights to the character were back with Marvel, who used him in the 4th season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so unsurprisingly, a third movie was well and truly dead. Just like how I felt inside watching Ghost Rider 1 and 2. Next up, for something else nobody wanted to see, was more Fantastic Four movies from Fox. Yay! Remember when Captain America was the Human Torch in bad Marvel movies? Back in 2005 and 2007 respectively, we got Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four 2, Rise of the Silver Surfer. A year before the first one came out, there happened to be what I consider an animated Fantastic Four movie anyway. When Chris Evans and the rest of the cast signed up to be the Fantastic Four in the early 2000s, they had all signed a 3-movie deal. It was said that the first movie was rushed into theatres, and 6 months after its release, the sequel was already in the works. When the cast had not heard anything about a third movie shortly after the second, they knew it wasn't going to happen. In fact, Chris Evans said he'd never even heard from Fox about the third movie that he was contracted to do. He is quoted saying at the time, "We had all planned on doing another one, but if there was going to be a third, I think a week after the second one was released we would have heard." Tim Story, who is in charge of, well, the story, said he planned on making another 2 movies and wanted to bring in Black Panther. Now, Fox didn't have the rights to Black Panther, but there was a kind of grey area and a bit of a loophole on how they could use him, because Black Panther was first introduced in a Fantastic Four comic back in 1966. This is similar to the loophole that allowed Marvel to use Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in the MCU and Avengers movies, even though they hadn't had the rights to the X-Men back yet. Anyway, all I can really remember from those early Fantastic Four movies was how we were constantly teased with naked Jessica Alba. Anyway, in order to keep the rights to these characters and stop them reverting back to Marvel, Fox had to make Fantastic Four movies or make use of those characters in some way in order to keep them. Which is why in 2015 we got the pointlessly boring and unnecessary Fan 4 stick, where nothing happened until the last 20 minutes or so. The majority of people felt the same. Now, you would have thought this left Fox in quite a predicament about what to do about making another film, especially considering how they had to make a sequel by 2022 in order to keep the characters. But no. They decided they wanted to go full steam ahead and bore us all again with another attempt of making a good Fantastic Four movie. At one point in 2015, Tommy Wiseau expressed enthusiasm in directing a sequel. My God, I wish he did. Now, to me, that was the way forward. I cannot tell you how badly I want to see that shit show of a movie with this man directing it.
The bank saves money, and they are using me, and I am the fool. I'm okay.
Are you okay? Did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Chip, 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 chip.
Just imagine his version of the movie. You know he'd cast himself as somebody as well.
And he hit me.
He hit you?
Well, I don't want to marry him anymore.
What?
Did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Hi, babe.
Wow, you look so sexy.
Oh, hey, guys.
Hi, Danny.
Wow, look at you.
I'm tired. I'm wasted. I love you, darling. What's new with you?
I got a question for you.
Yeah. Did you get a new dress?
You are tearing me apart, Lisa! Do you understand life?
Do you? Anyway, how is your sex life?
By November 2015, unfortunately, we didn't get the announcement that Tommy Wiseau was going to be directing it. But instead, we found out that it was removed from Fox's release schedule altogether. The only hope it had for returning was, believe it or not, in Deadpool 2. This news broke when concept artist Alexander Lozano revealed that original director Tim Miller wanted to use the 2015 Fan 4 stick as cameo appearances and even shared the concept art for it. I think if you had to use those characters again, it would have been a funny use of them in Deadpool 2, even as a very brief cameo like the other X-Men in that movie were.
Okay, they can't just dust off one of the famous X-Men. How about that Potts with the giant pigeon wings? What do those do anyway, huh? Carry him 3 feet off the ground to snatch up the nearest muffin crumb? No, 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 no.
Speaking of the X-Men and Deadpool, remember X-Men Origins Wolverine? It was technically the first time we got to see Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and will.i.am playing somebody. I get judged all the time for admitting that this movie is kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. I know, it's bad. But I kind of enjoy it. Well anyway, X-Men Origins Wolverine was meant to kickstart a whole new series of X-Men movies, focusing on each character's origin stories, with the next one being for Magneto. Although it doesn't sound like they had much planned after Wolverine and Magneto. But these are the two that Fox certainly decided to start with. We already saw an origin story for Magneto in the original X-Men movie, but this was obviously going to take a much deeper dive into it. Ian McKellen, who of course played Magneto in the original X-Men movies, was contracted for another movie after the original X-Men trilogy ended in 2006. So it's fair to assume that this would have been it, considering that the X-Men trilogy ended in 2006 and X-Men Origins Wolverine came in 2009. However, after Wolverine came out and people thought it was... the Magneto solo film was all but dead. Sheldon Turner was the man who originally wrote the screenplay for this, but then David Goyer, probably saying that wrong, was brought in to rewrite it. He gave us an insight into what the movie would be. At the time, he said this: "The film explores the World War II time period in which Eric Lenscher is a prisoner of a concentration camp and discovers his mutant abilities, later becoming Magneto. This period was briefly touched upon in the first X-Men movie. Charles Xavier, Professor X, will also factor into the story, and the meeting between Xavier and Lenscher, the subsequent friendship and eventually parting of ways is detailed in the film." Sound familiar? That's because this movie kind of happened in 2011's X-Men First Class, which is essentially a Magneto origin story that also explores the relationship between a young Eric and Charles.
Eric, I believe.
I prefer Magneto.
Sheldon Turner's original script was so heavily used that he did end up getting a story credit in the 2011 movie. It's a movie that I recommend as well, because I do think it is one of the best X-Men movies out there. Sticking with the X-Men, there was a Gambit movie planned for like 60 years or something. So they were going to spin off the character that they introduced in the Wolverine Origins movie. I'm guessing because of the same reason they scrapped the Magneto movie, because Wolverine was... They scrapped the whole spin-off idea and planned to make a whole fresh new movie on the Gambit character. Channing Tatum was cast, and funnily enough, he was rumoured to play Gambit originally in Wolverine.
Yo, Sleepy, what's up, homie? You know my cousin, Sad Boy.
I think you got the wrong guy, Holmes.
Everyone's saying that Barrio Sleepy, he like the Mexican Wolverine. And my partner, he wanna see the product.
When he talking?
My name is Jeff.
And then long story short, it got delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed until eventually it got delayed and delayed and delayed. Amazingly, it was still on Fox's release slate as recent as 2020, so it spent 11 years in development hell.
Wait! I did my waiting! 12 years of it!
But yeah, it had more directors than I've had hot dinners, until eventually it was put out of its misery and allowed to die after the Fox and Disney deal.
And then, when it is done, then you have my permission to die.
I mean, I guess it could still happen one day, when the MCU go full mutant crazy and run out of the small amount of characters that they have. Next up is Daredevil 2. So Ben Affleck was Daredevil back in 2003. Spoiler alert for this nearly 20-year-old movie that you likely won't and absolutely should not see. The ending clearly set up a sequel with Kingpin swearing revenge and Daredevil hopping around the city with Ben Affleck just pretending he was playing Batman until he actually was. Technically there was a sequel with 2005's Elektra, but it was more of a spin-off if anything. It happened in the same universe anyway. A movie in which Ben Affleck did cameo until it got deleted. Which I think he was pleased about because he was like, yeah, that movie sucked and I hated it too. There were rumours Marvel asked him to play Daredevil again one more time as a brief cameo in Doctor Strange 2, but Affleck was like, no, how many times do I have to tell you I hated that movie? To be fair, he's not the only one. I don't think Colin Farrell really wants to remember himself in that movie either.
His face.
Holy God, what are you showing me? Come on! Open your eyes!
Okay, so next up is the Inhumans. So before that Disney and Fox merger deal happened, the MCU seemed like they were planning to make the Inhumans their equivalent for the X-Men, as they didn't have the rights to the mutants at the time. The planned movie kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed, like Gambit, but not as long, until eventually it just ended up as a TV show, even though Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was essentially an Inhuman show at that point. And the show did mention the events of S.H.I.E.L.D., so it was canon in their little bubble, I guess. If you want to see more about what I mean by that, I recommend checking out my video on which MCU shows are canon or not. Cheap plug. Anyway, in terms of the Inhumans show, actually, you know what? I'm just going to use what I said in my video here because I think it sums up my feelings perfectly. And I just don't want to talk about that show again. There was actually an Inhumans series, but do not watch it.
Don't tell me what to do.
I know I'm a Marvel loyalist, but my God, there is not one positive or redeeming thing I can say about that show. It is so bad, I might make a video one day just shitting on it. The villain of the show was actually right. It made no sense. And there were these guys who meet a Mr. Tumnus looking dude on a beach after he just walked out of the ocean and just agreed to blindly follow him and die. Like he could have been anybody. What the So yeah, I don't think we'll be seeing any more Inhumans projects anytime soon now. Amazingly, and it was probably the biggest cameo I was surprised about because I thought this show was never gonna get any recognition from Marvel Studios or the MCU or Kevin Feige or anything like that, but Anson Mount, who played Black Bolt in the show, amazingly appeared in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness as Black Bolt.
Blackagar Boltagun, keeper of the Terrigen Mists, the Inhuman King.
Blackagar Boltagard? Oh. Hit a guy, hit it there.
Now, obviously not as the same guy from the show, or I guess it kind of could be if you want to say that the Inhumans show happened in that 838 universe. Oh no, you can put it in the bin as far as I'm concerned. But I'm pleased with him, he still managed to get more acting work out of it. But aside from that, especially with the fact they got the X-Men back, I don't think we're going to be getting any more Inhumans projects from here on out. The only reason Black Bolt was in Doctor Strange 2 is because in the comics he actually is a member of the Illuminati and they were just staying true to that. Last up, we have Hulk 2. And I'm not talking about a sequel to the MCU canon movie, The Incredible Hulk. I'm talking about that god-awful movie from 2003 with Eric Bana playing Bruce Banner. Geez, that movie felt longer than the extended version of Lord of the Rings. All the Lord of the Rings movies combined. Yeah, nothing happened in that movie. Hulk has a weird bearded dad who turns into a cloud and he hulks up and fights the cloud and jumps across the desert and fights Hulk dogs that look like they came from the Scooby-Doo movies. But yeah, look, like I said before, the superhero genre was a completely different thing in the early 2000s. Thank God they didn't make another one of these for somebody like me to sit through. But they kind of did.
What do you mean by that?
You see, the ideas for the 2003 Hulk sequel was going to feature the Abomination as the villain, as well as the leader, and both of those happened in the MCU Hulk movie. The leader was teased at least, and then forgot about for like 15 years until they decided to bring him back in Captain America 4 Stick.
And for the first time in 14 years, coming back to the MCU, the incredible actor Tim Blake Nelson as the leader.
Also, at the end of the 2003 Hulk, when you finally get to it, trust me, the movie ends with Bruce Banner in Brazil, and then the MCU one starts with him also in Brazil. So it sounds like this is another case of an idea that failed to materialise to anything on screen, so they used it again in a later project. Now, I was going to talk about all of the plans for the various Spider-Man movies over the years, but there's so many of them I thought that's going to be better off as a separate video on its own. Just going to make it completely separate and its own thing, just like the Inhumans TV show should be. But yeah, that's going to be a separate video, so stay tuned for that. These movies that we covered in this video though are out there somewhere in the multiverse, I guess. But let me know in the comments below which movies you would have liked to have seen be made from this list, or just any Marvel movies in general that you wish we had by now. Thanks for watching as always, and be sure to hit that like, subscribe, and never mind my pre-recorded outro already covers that. Hey! If you're a fellow film fanatic and serial TV show binger, this is the place for you. Be sure to check out all of the videos I have here discussing the latest movies and shows and generally just having a good old time. I'd love to have you around, so make sure you click that subscribe button and that bell thingy to be notified of all future videos. Now stop watching this and go check out the videos.